This video will walk through the ease of deploying a FortiGate in your Azure environment. We're going to utilize this simple topology where a FortiGate has two interfaces deployed, an internal one and an external one, and also having a public IP associated with the external interface, so routing can be done and configurations can be done as well. I'll be utilizing this administration guide or deployment process that's in this Azure admin guide that's on docs.fortinet.com in the public cloud library for 7.0. This shows you some of the parameters that will need inputs from users deploying the VM. So let's step through that right now. Go to Marketplace in your Azure account, find FortiGate Next Generation Firewall, and select the tile for that, which is highlighted here. And in here you can see that there's multiple plans that can be deployed: a single VM, an active or active passive components. As you can see in the details right there, there is a 30 days trial period, so you can try it out before you actually buy. Let's create the firewall. So basic information needed: subscription, pay as you go, resource group. We'll create a new resource group. We'll name it AZRS-1 and click OK. And again, step through. We're going to deploy in the US West region. The administration username, FortiGate password, the name of the FortiGate, and then we'll use the image SKU of pay as you go, and then using the latest version, which is 7.0, which will default to that. Next is instance type, and here we'll accept the default, which is a standard F2S, 2 CPU, 4 gig of memory. And then here for the virtual network, we'll accept the default for a FortiGate VNet, and then the IP addresses of 10.21 subnet. Configure public IP address. Again, we're going to accept the default. It'll be FGT public IP address. That'll get created brand new and associated to the interface. And then in the advanced, we're not going to have a FortiManager, so we're just going to click on review and create. Here you can review all the information once the validation process has passed. So the basic information, again, the subscription type, the region you're deploying in, and then networking information, IP address. And then you're done with that, and we will click on create. Let's pause the video while the VM is being created in the back end, and we'll start up again once it's all done. The deployment is complete, so we can look at the resources that have been created. So here's a list of all the virtual machine network interfaces, disk, and public IP address that's been created. Let's get the details of the FortiGate that's been deployed so we can access it. So here you can see the public IP address available, and we'll copy that into the clipboard and access the dashboard and the GUI so we can start configuring the application and the profiles and so forth. Here we'll open up a new tab, copy the IP address, accept the certificate warning, and get to the GUI, and this is where you will utilize the admin user and the password that was created earlier to access this device. Go ahead and configure the basic dashboard setup for optimal display, and once you've done that, you can also skip the video intro that's there. Here you can see the default view, the dashboard status, and all the options available on the left side. and then here is all the system information, and then the licenses that are available, and the default tiles that are there for memory sessions and so forth. And then in the interfaces portion, you can see port 1, port 2. So port 1 is the external interface with the 10.21.144.4, and then port 2 is your LAN interface to connect your internal application, internal networks to. You will have to register the product if you don't already have an account. So right here it says FortiCare support not registered. You can click on action and register online. So if you already have a FortiCare FortiCloud account, go ahead and log in. Otherwise, you can register using the register button below that and get an account. As you can see, this VM is fully licensed. Firmware, general updates, intrusion protection, antivirus, web filtering, and all the other components that are needed. Now let's look at the security profile portion of it. Here is where you can configure intrusion protection, and by default there are already profiles created, but you can always create a new profile if you want by clicking create and then giving it a name and enabling the other parameters that are available, blocking malicious URL, and then creating the signatures and filters that are available here by default. And you can hover over the name of the filter and get more detailed information of the severities and summary of what it entails. The FortiGate allows you to create application control profiles as well. So there are some default ones, but if you wanted to create a new one, the FortiGate can control up to 93 cloud applications for inspection as stated up top. So in here, there's groups of business application, collaboration, games, and so on. And a couple of the ones that are being blocked by default is peer-to-peer and then proxy applications. Once you have completed all your security profiles, you can go into the policy and objects firewall policies and utilize those security profiles as shown here. For example, for IPS, you can toggle the switch and it'll show you the default profile, but all the other profiles that were created and ones that you created as well. Same thing for application control, and then the rest of them too, antivirus, web application, or web filtering and the likes, and then turn on SSL inspection as well. So there are documentations to step through all that in docs.fortinet.com. Now let's look at the SSL VPN configurations that are available for remote users and teleworkers access. So by default, there's full access, tunnel access, and web access. We can look at the full access parameter or profile. Here you can see that the split tunneling is enabled and routing address and source IP pools are already configured. I'm not going to go through all that. There is another video available that will walk you through configuring SSL VPN, configuring users, and so forth. This is the video that's available on Vimeo talking about teleworker solution deploying SSL VPN full tunneling for your remote users to access your network. And this is just a quick glimpse of all the available options that are there, configuring interface, firewall, so forth, users, groups, and then the SSL settings itself. There are also Fortinet documentation. The admin guide for configuring SSL VPN full tunnel, you can access that at docs.fortinet.com and follow the steps to provision it that way as well. Fortinet also provides some automation via the automation stitches in our security fabric. So here I'm showing you the documentation regarding automation stitches, what it can do. it can alert on security events, right? So you can use it to alert on specific logs, specific attempts or failures and things like that, and also utilize cloud-based action as well. For, since we're using Azure, there's an Azure function that you can call to maybe trigger an email or help with the resolution process. Here are the available actions that can be taken when a trigger is activated. So you can do client quarantine, Fortinet quarantine, IP ban, and then under notifications, you can do email, you can do a Slack notification, Teams notification, and then there's also the cloud compute portion of it where you can do an Azure function. And in general, you can do a generic CLI script, webhooks, or just a generic alert. Let's look at how it's done in the GUI. So under Security Fabric Automation, Create, you can add triggers. By default, there are a couple of them already, like license expiration notice, compromise host, and so forth. So in the automation trigger itself, there's a security fabric portion of it, system portion of it, where you have HA failover or reboot, conserve mode options, and then miscellaneous for event logging, incoming webhooks. Fortinet does provide an ARM template, Azure Resource Manager templates for provisioning FortiGate. They're located in the GitHub directory shown above in the URL link, and you can provision, single VM, FortiGate, active, the same plans that are available in Marketplace as well. So you can read through all this description and then scroll down to the part where it has deploy in Azure, and you can step through those directions from there. Here's the deployment using the ARM template. There's only 2 steps, basically basic information, and then going through review and then create once you're satisfied with all the input parameters you've entered. Here are the actual links for the cookbook, the administration guide, and then for the teleworker solution that's demoed on Vimeo. Once again, Fortinet does provide a 30-day free trial for you to test out the FortiGate next generation firewall. Thanks for watching.